Hey there investors, welcome back to another video. In this video, we'll be looking at Palantir. The ticker symbol for Palantir is PLTR. And the reason we'll be looking at Palantir is because I want to talk about a few of the catalysts that have been coming up recently in the news. And also want to take a look at unusual option activity for Palantir. And for those of you who are new, the reason that we look at unusual option activity is because it's typically a good indicator of where the smart money is going. And the smart money is made up of these large, sophisticated institutional investors with buying power in the millions. These are just investors who are either buying large volumes of calls, thinking that the price of a stock will go up, or large volumes of puts, thinking that the price of a stock will go down. So this is what we define as unusual option activity, and it's good information for us to either use as a way to follow the trades or take more conservative positions, or maybe find good entry and exit points for any stock that we are looking to start a position in, either in the short term or long term. So please remember to check out the disclaimer in the description below, as well as some of the information that I'll be covering in this video. And with Palantir, I really kind of want to talk about what's been going on after its Q4 earnings. We can see that the stock just came back down to this 25 level and is sort of creeping back up here after dipping. And when we look at the list of most active stock options, we can see that Palantir is actually number one here, having the most option volume, which is the total volume for all option contracts traded during the current session. So in this past session on Friday, it was the most traded in the options market. And you can see most of them, 70% being calls and 29% being puts. And these are options where investors are starting positions for the days going forward or closing some positions, and it could be a mix of both. And we could really get a picture of that by either looking at the volume, the traded volume, and the open interest. So which ones are being closed and traded, and which ones are being opened and just left holding there for it to kind of play out. When we look at Market Chameleon, we could also see that the same sort of the same indicator here, Palantir being the most traded, 70 to 30, which is pretty interesting. One interesting resource that I did want to share with you guys too was a few of these pieces of information that I found. One of them being this website called Swaggy Stocks, where it tracks some of the, I guess, most actively talked about tickers on Wall Street bets. You can see Palantir here has been climbing, almost taking over GameStop as one of the most talked about tickers. There's another good resource here that I found from this user, PDWP90. So you can follow him or her on Reddit, and they typically post about an hour before market open a list of the most discussed tickers on Wall Street bets. And you can see here on Friday, Palantir was the most discussed by numbers of mentions. And some of these wheat stocks that have recently been rallying in the past few weeks have also taken kind of a dive back. And a few of these quote unquote meme stocks as well have kind of taken a little bit of decline in dimensions. Ryan Blockchain, which is pretty interesting, has climbed back up this list, mostly, I guess, driven by the rally in Bitcoin. So this is pretty interesting to see. And when we look at Palantir in the news, we can see that I guess, the biggest news is its earnings, and investors are really looking at its forward-looking guidance as well as some of the results and where the company expects its revenue to grow. You can see here that the Motley Fool posted this interesting article too that I wanted to share, sort of kind of arguing this thesis for maybe why it's a good buy based on some of the things that investors are not really considering in its results, such as stock compensation kind of distorting its earnings. There also being good margins for the company, rising revenue per customer, and there just, being not that much competition since Palantir is in kind of this niche area when compared to some of its closest competitors like Alteryx and Salesforce. So pretty interesting article that you guys should definitely check out if you have the chance. And another piece of information that I think is pretty relevant is getting these emails from ARK Invest. If you go to ARK Invest's website, I think I've mentioned it in a video before in the past, you can actually subscribe to receive email alerts from the company where they'll email you, I think at the end of every trading day, a list of the stocks that they either bought or sold. And you can see here the company started its position roughly around January 14th, buying almost 500,000 shares. And then on February 16th, recently, with kind of the stock coming back down to its lows, the company added 1.56 million shares. And then February 18th, ARK Invest added roughly 5.27 million when the stock, I think, was trading around 25. So there's a lot of strong buying here from Cathie Wood's ARK Invest. And all in all, this is another website too where you can see some of ARK's trades and a little bit of analysis on their trades. And this is interesting too, seeing Palantir, their position size has changed roughly 101%. So really having a major change in their position, which is pretty interesting because I think Cathie Wood went on CNBC and actually talked about how Palantir was one of their deep value investments that they were really looking for to play out within the next 5 years, which is pretty interesting, right? And I think could have some potential in the long term, as Cathie Wood has mentioned. But when we look at sort of, I guess, either looking at the short term or long term, we want to see where some of the smart money is going now and maybe later. So in the short term, we can see that there's roughly 500,000, almost 600,000 contracts or volume in total being traded for this expiration. So investors think that the price, just looking at this chain, roughly could be reaching this 30 strike price in this coming week. And on the put side, could be reaching potentially this 25 or 28 strike price within the coming week, which is pretty interesting. And another interesting thing to know is there also being a lot of volume here for these longer term expirations. So this right here, you can see 30 again being the largest strike price with, or the largest volume for this strike price. And on the January 2023 strike price, you can also see this 30 strike price also being the largest here. And when you look at bar chart in I guess the long-term sense, you can also see this volume of 30,000, which is a lot. But in the short term, we can see that investors are also looking at roughly this 30 strike price, which is still a pretty good amount. And when we look at, I guess, plug that into Robinhood and this option chain, we can see that I guess even just in this medium term, March 19th comes out to roughly 5.7 million in this position. And when we look at the February 26th expiration, that's roughly 2496 in volume, which is almost 3 million, right? It's pretty crazy. And you can see that too in this longer term play. 30 January 2022 is roughly 31 million, which is just crazy. And even January 2023, 25.7 million, which is, very, very bullish. So when we look at this option chain, we really want to do some technical analysis also to see if, the stock could hit these prices that investors think it will, roughly being that either on the bullish side, the 30 strike price or more, up to 40 as we saw in that option chain, and maybe even on the bearish side going back down below. So we can see here high level I highlighted this with the red lines here, this trend of potentially there being a technical breakout to the upside. And when we kind of ignore this line for now, but we see that the stock has hit sort of the base of this trend line, there could be a technical, almost solely technical, that the stock will come back up to this at least 30 or 31 strike price level, which it has a pretty good probability since it's sort of bouncing from this. It could also just be rejecting it from here and just go back down. So it all really depends on the conditions of sort of the market and kind of what the sentiment is. We can see though that this level has also served as support here and resistance here, which is another interesting level to watch. So could also provide more strength to the thesis that there could be a little bit of a technical breakout here, at least in the short term. But as we saw with these longer term expiration contracts, investors are also eyeing the long term, 2022, 2023. So that could also be another thing that we look at. When we look at the specific trade idea, I guess in this example, we'll focus more on the short term, but you could really, as we saw on the March 19th contracts, you could really also go a little bit further out, giving yourself either 1 or 2 more weeks for expiration, or if you're either on the bullish side or the bearish side. But if you're more of long-term mindset, then you might want to go out in that 2022 or 2023 if you're bullish on Palantir and sort of its business. But this is really the idea, getting the 30 calls at roughly 147, and the entry point would really be with the stock coming back up above its 5-day moving average, which we can see here from the bar chart website is 2820, and the levels of resistance being its previous levels that it has hit before as well here. So on the upside, those would be the levels that we would take profit. As you can see, based on technical analysis, there's a good chance that just purely on technical analysis that the stock could be going at least back up to 30. So if it doesn't, then I think another good way to trade this would also be getting put options in the short term for the 30 strike price and just going below this 5-day moving average as our entry point. So that would be another indicator. And then these would be the levels that we would roughly take profits at. As we saw, the stock did come back down to 22 roughly, or 24 at least, and then came back down here to its level of support around 22. So there's a good chance for sure that if conditions turn bearish, that the stock could be coming back down. And our stop loss for both of these would be with the stock going on the bullish side below this 2820, and on the bearish side going above. So if it goes above, then it's definitely not bearish anymore, and we should close out this position. So that's really the idea there. Me personally, I think I would get some of the longer term trades, but that's just me since I'm a little bit more bullish on kind of Palantir as a company long term. Another resource that I wanted to share with you guys really quickly was this option calculator. On here, you can pretty much calculate what your gains would be if the stock price reached a certain price. So if we look up Palantir and we enter this, the website enters the price automatically, and let's say we're getting this 30 strike price for February 26, and we go and enter that information, then you hit calculate and you get this interesting chart. You may be asking, what is going on here? But on the top side here, we can see the dates. So we got the 26 expiration, 26 being the last date of expiration. And on the left side here, the x-axis, you can see the prices, that the stock could reach. So if the stock, let's say, reaches our first level of 29.60, then that would give us a 25% increase. If it reaches our second level of 30.60, I guess we'd see another maybe 20%, almost 50%. And then 31, then we'd see 72% for like a total of $107 profit. So you can see we bought the contracts at roughly 147 each. And if it gets to this price around $30, $31, then these contracts would be worth 254, giving us a profit of 107. So this is a really good resource, and definitely encourage you guys to check it out and use it if you're looking to determine what's the profit that you could potentially be making when looking at some of these levels of profit taking. So that is a resource that I wanted to share. Another important resource is for any public company, you can go to their website. Typically, in any part of their website, they'll have this investor relations section where you can see some of the resources that they post, like their 10Q, their 10K quarterly results. Usually, publicly traded companies will post this fancy slide deck. Well, they'll have really good diagrams and presentations that they, I think, use as a guide during their quarterly calls. But I think a few things that I wanted to point out here were one of them being that the concentration risk for some of their top customers coming back down from 2019 to 2020, 67% to 61%, but their revenue increasing from 495 million to 663. And another interesting slide here was the guidance that they gave. So they expect revenue 4 billion in 2025, and for the full year of 2021 they expect revenue growth over 30%. However, in just Q1 of 2021 they expect revenue growth of 45% and an increased operating margin 23%, which is just pretty strong when you're looking at where the business is going. It gives you a good glimpse of where they think the company is going. So those are all the pieces of resources that I wanted to share with you guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Sorry for making this a little bit longer, but there's just a lot here to kind of share in this video. And I've been away for a little bit of time, just been busy with work, but I'm going to try to shoot for posting at least a video at least every week, so that we can try to capture some of these opportunities happening in the market. There's also been a few interesting YouTubers that I've been checking out recently that have discussed some of the major trending topics in the stock market currently, one of them being Cascades Academy, if you guys are familiar with that YouTube channel, and Wall Street Millennial, and just some of the other I guess more like podcast based YouTubers like Dave Lee on investing. And some of these YouTubers have actually done some pretty interesting research, almost kind of talking about this correction coming up, and there's been more talks about it recently on the news. So it's something definitely to watch, and I just wanted to advise you guys to just definitely be safe out there on the market currently. I'm not saying panic sell or liquidate all your positions, but just definitely definitely just keep an eye out for just entering any positions, or I guess really considering what positions you're entering. If there is a correction, there could be some downside, and it could just make it a little bit, I guess sometimes hard to start a position, but definitely just do your due diligence and take some extra time to look at. I think a helpful resource is always technical analysis to see where the stock has been historically and where it could go moving forward. So if you're looking for any entry points, definitely do some little technical analysis and just kind of see what would be a good entry point for a particular stock that you're looking at. But that is all that I wanted to share. Thank you guys for watching and tuning in, and hope to see you guys in the next one.